know what would make that better? A cup of White Cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White Cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome as White Cane Coffee presents Coffee and a Conversation. As you can see, our guest this week, Mr. Arthur Stewart, the proud new owner of Cable Hollow Golf Course, Cameron Energy Company. We probably could list a plethora of other things. We're so glad that you took some time with us on this beautiful Saturday morning to sit down and talk about this new venture that you have.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's been a lot of work, but we've been having a grand time with it. I said last night to the kids, 6 months ago, we never dreamt of owning a golf course. The Bortzes called us in November, and I'd golfed there for 50 years on and off. And they said, we had some thoughts of selling it to our children. That didn't work out. And would you be interested in buying the golf course? I talked to my kids, and out of the clear blue, we bought a golf course. And I love the game. I gave it up while the kids were young, but I love to be outdoors. I like equipment, so to get out there and be able to build some new holes and change some holes, make it a great golf course. I love going to golf tournaments, do some things from Augusta and from St. Andrews, bring it right here to Warren County. Yeah, we're just excited.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was with Erie News that they spoke with you about this, and you had said something about essentially turning this into Augusta North. And expand on that a little bit. I mean, in your mind, what does that vision entail?
So Cable has some great holes, as do a lot of the other courses around here, but every golf course has its weaknesses. If we could make every hole at Cable Hollow a standout hole, that would make it a tremendous golf course, and that's our goal. So what better way to make it a great golf course than go to some of the great golf courses in the world and harvest some of those ideas. So we have a place up there that is totally underutilized next to the big pond, and it just lays out to be similar to Augusta 16, and it begs for that to happen. So the great thing about Augusta 16 is the green breaks right to left, and then it has the water there. Yeah. It's the hole where so many Masters have been won or lost. Nicholas in 86 has that tremendous shot in there. So we're going to replicate that. We're going to take old number 5, do away with it completely, build new tee box, take advantage of the water, build new green, have it be like Augusta, and let folks here have that experience. And it's surrounded by other great holes. Make that a great hole, and you've taken the front 9 and just done something special with it.
Well, and as a side product, I'm sure it's just devastating that you might have to go explore some of these great courses that you mentioned.
I could be a tournament junkie. I go every year to the Arnold Palmer, to TPC Sawgrass, going up to Rochester next weekend. We go to the Memorial every year. I just to see the courses. Yeah. And of course, we've been to Augusta a number of times and sat on that par 3. Just magic. And I lived for a year in St. Andrews. Oh. I went to university in 79 and 78. And I could spit on the 18th green from my residence hall. It was an unbelievable year. And every Sunday, they shut St. Andrews down for golf and allowed the community to walk on the course. Nice. So I got out there and I walked St. Andrews umpteen times, and then I got to play St. Andrews 8 or 9 times while I was there that year. And so we're going to do an homage to St. Andrews as well. It has the combined greens. A lot of times at St. Andrews, one massive green for 2 holes. We're going to do the same thing at Cable Hollow.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun when it's all done. And a lot of local golfers, I'm sure, are just licking their chops at the chance to.
We've I just had some fun interactions in the last 2 months showing folks what our ideas are. And of course, the ideas are shaped in part on what the patrons want. I get a lot of complaints about two greens in particular, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to start our effort. We've hired an architect. I thought I knew something about golf courses until the architect came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the other thing. You said this kind of as we were talking off air. You said left field, and we said maybe off the 19th green. This opportunity. What have been some of the biggest challenges, or maybe things that you didn't expect that you've run into so far?
The architect. I thought I knew about golf courses, and I knew I wanted to change some holes just because of having played there over the years, having heard other folks talk about it. When the architect came out and we met the first time, I was an opponent, and my golf course superintendent was one who was urging the architect. And I thought, well, I'll humor him and have the architect out. The very first hole I took him to, I said, here's my idea. And he said, well, what about this and what about that? And I said, well, what do you mean? And then he laid out his thinking.
Right.
And it was a completely different way to look at golf, even though I've been around golf
Right.
for 55, 60 years. And I realized, my dad used to say, when you want your haircut, go to a barber.
Yeah.
When you want a will done, go to a lawyer.
Right.
When you want to build a golf course, maybe it's a good idea. Yeah.
And I'm sure, the purchase process itself. I mean, it certainly is not like, oh, hey, there's a house for sale. We'll go put in an offer and buy it. Right? I mean, there's got to be some more complications with some of the licensing, and especially there with the restaurant and things.
Oh.
Right? It's almost like a combination.
That's been the other surprise. If
Yeah.
you want to know about surprises, getting registered to do a food and beverage business in Pennsylvania is a nightmare. It's supposedly one of the worst states in the nation for bureaucracy. We've experienced that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, were those all things that you kind of took into consideration, or was it
No.
not really until you got started in the process going, oh, wait, we got to do this and this and
Fortunately, I've been involved in enough businesses and have had some businesses larger than the golf course that it wasn't as intimidating as it might otherwise have been, because you've just been through the ringer over the years on dealing with stuff that happens. And so if it's kind of like building a new kitchen or bathroom in your house. You're not going to make the money back when you sell it.
right.
But it's something that you're going to enjoy. And I looked at the golf course and I thought, I'll never make this purchase price back. Golf in northwestern Pennsylvania is a 6-month a
If you're
year
lucky.
enterprise. And that's why golf courses are on hard times. But I'm fortunately in a position where I could buy it. My son, I was feeling guilty about buying the golf course. And my son said, Dad, you've worked 2 jobs your entire life. You've never even bought yourself a sports car or anything.
Right.
Buy a golf course and
Yeah.
have fun. So I'm kind of looking at it not as a money-making enterprise, but as a joyful thing. And whatever problems come up along the way, I've got enough experience to solve problems. We just solve them.
Yeah. Well, and now you've got unlimited access to go out and play a few holes whenever you want. I'm sure.
Well,
Added bonus.
the best thing about that,
Yeah.
and here we are in a podcast, so it's not a secret, but I'm going to take my dog golfing. I already do.
Yeah.
And the greatest thing about owning a golf course is nobody can say no.
You're right. Get that dog off the course.
Yeah.
Hey, my course. I'll do what I want.
We can't have dogs on the golf course as a general rule,
Right.
but I guess if I'm the owner and I want to take Mac out for a stroll,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure, even not just to play, but just to stroll along the course sometimes. I mean,
I've had some great walks
Yeah. Oh,
out there
yeah.
in the evening when golf play is winding down. And it's the most gorgeous place in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. And I've been around the country and the world a lot.
Right.
That's gorgeous up there.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the views, even as it stands, when you're on some of those tees at Cable Hall are just phenomenal.
What makes it special too is when you're on the tees at Cable Hollow, you look across the Conowanga Creek Valley. On the other side, that's where I grew up.
Oh wow! So you can stand there and just where I spent my childhood, spent your childhood playing on those hills, and now
Look back.
now you spend your adult playing on these.
Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, this is not your first foray into the business world. Obviously, you've got your Cameron Energy shirt on this morning. Um, but how different has the golf course been than, I mean, obviously there's completely different fields from oil and gas, but just from the process of getting everything up and running, has it been more or less complicated? How would you compare the two?
It's a great question that I haven't thought about. It has a lot of similarities to what every business owner goes through. Um, the regulatory struggle is true in the oil and gas business. It's true in that business. It's probably true for every restaurant that tries to open. And I found that regulatory struggle over the years to be more difficult because the gap widens. The folks who go into the regulatory business go directly there from high school or college, have no business experience, and have little sympathy for what it's like to experience what every American used to experience. So you think back 100 years ago, 85% of the country was involved in agriculture. Everybody had their own farm. When I grew up in Akeley, how many dairy farms were there? There were a zillion.
Right.
And everybody had that experience of having to hoe their own garden and in some way make their own way without a salary. And today that gap is completely turned around. 2% of the world is involved in agriculture, and most folks draw a salary or a wage now.
Right.
And I think that disassociation from the reality of what it is to have your fingers in the earth and to have to run a business. So the regulatory is tough. And then just the risk. You're a businessman, you know what the risk is. You don't eat.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't make a profit.
Yeah.
You're not in the business to make a wage. You're in the business to make a profit.
Right.
And then I have 55 employees, so I not only have to make a profit to feed myself, but now I got to feed 55 people, and the same is true at the golf course. So all those worries are kind of common. Maybe the biggest one. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
Oh, you're fine. No, that's what we're here for.
Is borrowing money.
Yeah.
First time I had to borrow. Well, first time I borrowed money was from Max Brady when I was in law school. I bought video games to make my way through law school. And I borrowed $5,000. So that was scary because for a kid in law school with a new wife, $5,000 was an enormous amount of money. But in my oil business, the first big foray after initially buying it, so forth, was going to borrow $500,000. And that was just intimidating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You start getting into 6 and 7 figure borrowing. There's a lot of soul searching that goes into that, I'm sure.
A lot of sleepless nights, absolutely. Yeah.
So you just mentioned you were in law school. So how did you transition from law to oil and gas?
So in law school, I really enjoyed the study of oil and gas, and I didn't have any idea that I would be involved in it from a business perspective. It was just intellectually interesting, the notion that somebody can own the surface and some different person can own the subsurface, and that law became formed in Pennsylvania. We started it not just in the country but in the world. And so when I got out of law school, I came to work here in Warren. And a couple of years after I started, a gentleman came to the office who wanted to sell 1,000 acres and 13 wells. And so I thought, I'd be interested in buying that.
Yeah.
So that's how that started.
And now it's 55 employees. And
1,700 wells.
Yeah.
And, a few years and a few gray hairs later.
Yeah, that's my wife was coming up. She came up to me a couple days ago, and she said, "What's that you got in there?"
Oh, yeah.
That's well, I've been out in the sun today. That's just bleach. We'll let that go. But
Speaking of it, my wife should have more gray hairs than I because I asked her for her thoughts when we first borrowed the $5,000 for video games, and she thought about it. She said, let's do that. Go.
Yeah.
And everywhere along the way, anytime I've come up with a harebrained idea, hey, we're going to start this business or we're going to do this, she's over in the background saying, go ahead, I'll support you, and I'll take care of the kids. And so she deserves and has earned more gray hairs than I.
Absolutely agree. In fact, when we were discussing starting your day, She said, "I support you 100%. My only condition is that you be home 4 nights a week for dinner." And this week has not been one of those weeks for sure. It's we start getting into May, and all of a sudden everything's happening. And a couple of those nights this week were spent with you up at the central office,
Right.
and and that's another thing that we were talking about just before we came on air, that you're about to finish 33 years working with the school district and the school board, and a lot has changed since 1990 to 2023, and you've kind of been there to see it all. And what has that experience been
Yeah, bittersweet.
like?
I was the solicitor for 17 years, and now I've been on the school board for 16. A lot has changed. Of course, we've consolidated. I think there were over 30 schools. When I started when we were closing McClintock, Urbandale, and a couple others. So I've been around for the consolidation of all the elementary schools and all the middle schools. The other thing that's changed is the loss of local control. These unfunded mandates that have come down the pike from the state and from the federal government. Probably the greatest place that's impacted us, most visible to all of us, would be special education. We spend a huge amount of money and an incredible amount of resources there. Not that that's undeserved, but it's mandated in a way that our local teachers lose control of the classroom and they become enslaved to a rigor and documents that they feel helpless to have input on. The administrators feel the same helplessness. And for example, the notion that we engage in positive behavior reinforcement is a good thing, but like so much else, the pendulum swings so far to one direction. And so we focus entirely on that, and we lose the ability, you lose permission to have any other skills or tools in your toolbox. And it's been that process repeated over and over. COVID was the ultimate in the loss of control.
Right.
What thinking adult thought keeping kids out of school for a medical condition that didn't impact them in the main, a tiny percentage of youth impacted by COVID, but every student impacted by being excluded from school, and the failure to rationally balance the good and the bad with that was dumbfounding.
It struck me throughout most of that it seemed like it was, we have to go to the absolute extreme because there was a fear, and maybe rightly so, maybe not, that if one child was impacted because you didn't take the far extreme measures, that there would just be a complete reckoning throughout. Almost like a teardown of the system completely because you failed on the ultimate level, right? Which is to keep kids safe. And
really, you answered the question that you asked about the change in education over 33 years better than I did. That polemic, that taking things to the extreme, is probably the greatest difference in 33 years. We've become so focused on needs of minority segments, which isn't to say that you shouldn't be thinking about those, but be thinking about those in the almost to the exclusive, and leaving this entire middle unattended to, maybe it's not criminal, but it's, in my estimation, not sound thinking.
well, and that's obviously the current discussions going on in the school board are of great interest to many folks in the county.
Are we getting to the consolidation question?
Well, I'm not gonna put
okay.
you on the spot because I don't think that's not fair. I don't want to feel like you're being kind of ambushed with that.
No,
But this is obviously not the first time you've been through this process,
No.
both as a board member and as a solicitor. But how has the discussion around any time we talk about consolidation of any kind, I mean, from the elementary to the high schools, how has that discussion changed, if at all, from when you were first seeing it 33 years ago to today?
Some elements haven't changed. I currently at school we're going to see the SOS Save Our School Teachers.
Right.
I've been seeing those for 30 years. And some other things don't change. The notion of community schools, that is a legitimate notion. What is a community without its churches, schools, stores, barbershops? So that is a legitimate point. The other things in the discussion are also legitimate. The population when I graduated from Eisenhower, the student population was over 12,000 in the school district. We're under 4,000 today. So those are truths as well. The number of electives that we were able to offer years ago at the high school setting is greater than what we're able to offer today. Those things are all part of the discussion. You know, forget high schools for a minute.
Right. Yeah.
And since you said we won't go there,
Right.
And you're welcome to go there. But just take the elementary and middle schools. We've had to consolidate those, and there was begrudging acceptance and outright opposition to it over the years. But as you look at our middle school and elementary configuration today, I think most people would agree that it's standing on a sound footing because we're able to efficiently use teachers. So we think that in a kindergarten class, we should have about one teacher for every 20 students or so. And in the upper middle school grades, you're okay to go to 1 to 27, 28. If you only have 1 to 13, you're only using half that teacher, and you're not being fair to the taxpayer. I think we have found a reasonable balance in the grade school and middle school where we still have some schools in the community, but we are efficient for the sake of the taxpayer and for delivering a fair education. I don't mean fair in the sense of great, but I mean equitable to the students. We're struggling with that at the high school level right now.
Well, and you talked about the population decline of students, 12,000 to less than 4,000, but we're seeing that now with the teachers too, which is which compounds the problem, right? I mean, what was it 10 years ago? There were, I think, over 16,000 students that were going for teacher certifications just in the Commonwealth schools, and now that's dipped to below 5,000.
Yeah, I don't know how you explain that. But 30 years ago, when I started, it would be normal to have 50 or 100 applications for every open grade school teacher position. Today, we obviously don't have any applications for some of those because 16% of the district's teaching staff are emergency certified. That's an unbelievable number.
That's which equate about 60 or so individuals, I think is what the
Yes.
that
We have
Amy said.
over 300 teaching staff. Yeah, that number is correct.
And that was something I'm working on a longer form piece for the website that I'm hoping to get out this week if I can find some time. But I sat down with Amy Stewart, superintendent, Eric Meinwieser, and just kind of talked about what's going on with this teacher shortage and how it's impacting the district. And that was, both of them said they've heard people say, why aren't we recruiting and attracting the best teachers? They're at a point right now where if somebody applies with teacher certification, that almost has to be an automatic, okay, we're going to call you in for an interview. Whereas 10 years ago, as you said, they would get stacks of applicants and they could go, okay, maybe not quite worth it, and be more selective. And now the district is just at a point, and it's not just here. And I think that's the thing that has maybe gotten lost in some of these conversations is that it's not unique. As much as Warren County is a unique school district within the Commonwealth, the issue of finding qualified, certified teachers is not unique
That's
to
right.
Warren County. And now it's almost flipped, whereas the districts 10 years ago could be more selective. Now those students who are coming out of colleges and universities with teaching certificates,
They
they
have
get
their
to
choice.
they get to pick and choose where they want to go. And so now it's, well, how do we sell them on coming to Warren County as opposed to maybe going to Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or somewhere else within.
I saw the candidate forum for folks running for school board. They were saying, well, we need to make a more attractive package for our teachers. You come to school board meetings all the time now, so you see the numbers. In terms of what we pay our teachers, we're right in line with surrounding school districts, which is part of what we look at when we're negotiating the contracts. And every other school district in the state, every other school district in the nation has the same notion.
Yeah.
Let's give a better package
Yeah.
to incentivize. Well, all you're doing is everybody's raising the bar, and it's not going to advance you in the competitive field.
And I don't know that compensation alone is the answer. It's the same thing
That's a great point.
that the county is facing. That was one of the questions at the commissioner candidate forum that we had on Wednesday at the library. And that, how do you essentially market Warren County to prospective businesses, prospective employees?
I think it's how do you get them here, and how do you get them into the classroom?
Yeah.
Being a teacher, for some of the reasons we talked about earlier, is a really tough job.
Yeah.
It's true you have the summer off, but for that 9 months that you're working there, it's not just an 8-hour-a-day job. It never has been. But compound that with all the demands put on by the federal and the state riggers now,
Yeah.
and all the paperwork that goes with it, and the feeling that you're just not free to be a teacher.
Yeah.
My daughter was a teacher for 2 years at Sheffield, and she decided she didn't want to continue. She loves to teach.
Yeah.
She worked at Disney World as a teacher, and it was a marvelous life's experience for her. She came to the public school setting. She loved the students. She liked the teaching, but it was for her an out of control experience in the class. She was a great teacher. She had the classroom in control. But she wasn't free to do the things that she thought were teaching. That's what I phrased it.
Well, yeah, and that was I laugh because my uncle was a 20-year Marine veteran, and when he retired from the Marine Corps, went back to school and initially got his teaching certificate, and he did that for a few years. And when you come from the Marine Corps, and it's very
to the
disciplined and
classroom
structured.
setting.
You go to the classroom setting
Hello.
as it was, and this was in the mid 2000s. So obviously there's been changes since then, and he said I can't do it anymore.
Can I just say for the record, when I was talking about the positive behavior enforcement, what's the analog to that? It's the negative reinforcement. One of my greatest life's experiences in retrospect was being called to John Neese's office at Eisenhower. He was the principal, and I got the most stern chewing out. There was not anything positive in that 10 minutes in the principal's office, but it was something that at least I needed.
Right.
Because not every method speaks to every child, and we know that about other things. How do we not know that about discipline?
Yeah.
It's remarkable what you said about the extreme becoming the norm.
It's interesting. Personally, so my wife is an Air Force vet when we were in Colorado Springs, and while we were living on base, and I was working for a short time at the Child Development Center, which is primarily newborn through preschool, but then they also have before and after school and summer programs for kindergarten through what we would call middle school, the 8th grade. And I got a similar chewing out, but it was the crux of it was basically you are not allowed to use the word no in the room.
Exactly.
At all. If a kid comes up and says, "Hey, can I run around with this pair of scissors?" You can't tell them no. You have to say, Well, instead of doing that, why don't you use the scissors to cut a piece of paper or something? And there are instances, and I understand the thought process behind redirection in a way that's positive. But there are instances, and especially in a situation like that where it is a safety issue, where you could saying no because you could hurt yourself or someone else.
Think about that all the time. I have grandchildren now. If they're approaching a hot stove,
Right.
the words off my lips are no.
Right. Yeah.
But translate that to in the field. We have a dozen rigs that we run in the oil and gas business. There are moments in time where it's a fraction of a second between this event and death.
Right.
There's time for a no, and that's all there's time for if you're lucky.
Right.
And people have to respond to that and understand what it means. And that's life.
Yeah.
I don't think positive behavior reinforcement is the only tool. It's an actual reflection of all of life's lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as it is so often with so many things. It's finding that middle between those two extremes where everybody can live and you're positively specifically for teachers and children where you're positively reinforcing where you can, but also explaining that there are instances in life, which is, in my opinion, part of what being in a classroom and teaching should be, is preparing students for life.
So how do you find the middle?
Right. Yeah.
We knew how to do that in law school.
Yeah.
We argued both sides of the case. And the thing in law school was you didn't get a reward for coming to the right answer, because the whole idea of law school was there's no right answer. You take a particular set of facts, and you should be able to adroitly come over and argue this side or argue that side. And what's missing in our culture, our society today? This ability to engage and argue without offense. So when colleges develop safe spaces because words can hurt us, I cringe at that because we're losing that entire middle.
Right.
I need to be able to say to you words that you find even hurtful, so that you can tell me why I'm wrong.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the other things that I've, obviously having spent more time at the board meetings than I had previously. But the last time we were going through a master facilities plan, I think it was around 2009 or 10. I was attending frequently at that point just to be informed. And it seems like the dialogue this time is more personal to some of the board members and administration, and maybe has a little bit more vitriol to it, as opposed to, look, I don't think you should do this, or I think you should do this, and here's my reason why. And now it seems like, and again, this is just my own personal observation, that it's more, well, you guys are idiots if you even considering this. Has that been?
I have heard those comments. I think that they are probably 20% or 10% of the comments, but they stand out because they have that quality. In response to that, I did ask at one of the public sessions for folks to do some homework and engage in some of the other items beyond talking about our community school or we like it as it is, because there are other elements that we need to ask ourselves, such as how can we make a teacher's day more reasonable, because we have this teacher's shortage and teachers are doing all these preps, that term that you've heard about. We need to reduce those number of preps, and we can't under the current configuration. So we either put our head in the sand about that problem or we talk about it. And so I threw out a challenge. Let's talk about these problems. Our number of electives have decreased. I threw out the challenge. Let's talk about that. And to the credit of several people, I have gotten some tremendous emails back.
And you had mentioned that this week. I can't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday. Their days kind of flow together sometimes, but that you had gotten some really good responses.
And you heard Joe Colosimo and Donna Zirkin come up with a new option at Monday last. That is probably in response to some of these inputs that we've been getting, the thoughtful inputs.
Right.
So it's not a process that hasn't had value.
Well, and you mentioned the preps, and that was the other thing in talking with Amy and Eric that they mentioned is that, not only is there a general shortage of teachers, but now they're also seeing, because of some of the discrepancies in the number of preps that teachers have between schools,
Yes.
that when things come open,
Oh,
current
there's a
teachers are
flood.
bidding out. There's a flood to get to those positions because they want to reduce their workload.
And that's human. It's understandable. It's logical. I'm sympathetic to it. We've got to fix it.
Yeah. It's, I think the most, I'm losing the word, but when Mary was talking about languages, foreign languages,
Oh, yes.
that the districts offered, and and she's rattling off the list, and I'm thinking, yeah, I was in school, and understanding it's been 23 years for me, so it's not an inordinate amount of time for this list to go from offering, I believe it was 7 at that time, and multiple levels of each of those languages to
Right.
now 1.
Right.
And maybe you get 2 levels of the language, and sometimes those are being taught at the same time.
Sure. And for the student who has an ability for languages, it may not be that many students.
Yeah.
What is our obligation as
Right.
school board directors to offer that? Or I bumped into Mrs. Morgan, the judge's wife. She used to teach common law and other courses up at Warren High School. For somebody like me who thrives on the Constitution, the history of our country, to not offer that class
It's one of my favorites, by the way.
Our job as adults is to, part of our job as adults, I don't want to be the pendulum on the left, part of our job as adults is to push students into the realms of new things or uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
So a student like me in 10th grade or 11th grade who otherwise wouldn't get exposed to common law, what vista does it open up if I get pushed into that class, or if I'm able to pick up on that little interest and say, I might like that.
Well, and I was sitting, Brian Ferry and I sit together at our little media table, and often we'll kind of compare notes on certain things, and we were looking at one of the documents showing the enrollments for some of the different classes, and both of us we're so disheartened to see, maybe one journalism class. I think Eisenhower has journalism 1 and 2, which I think is phenomenal. And we've had a couple of the students come up and ask us if they can do some things with us. And Chris Bunk has been a great color commentator for us for a couple of times. And we're happy to facilitate that, and we'd love to do more of it throughout the district. But, for me, when I first started college, I had all ambitions of becoming an athletic trainer. And it was one journalism class in college,
Switched your
and
whole
it
life.
changed everything. I changed majors, added probably another $30,000 to my student loan debt, and but I would, if I hadn't taken that class, you and I would not be sitting here today. And I think there comes a point where if we're not giving our high school students those opportunities, what kind of disservice are we doing to them?
And that's part of why I threw out that challenge, because our job as school board directors is to think about all the students in the district, and what you just said is part of what we have to factor in. I was going to say it's a weighty responsibility, but everybody knows that. There is no easy answer to this high school problem, and it's because the field is changing.
Right.
So here I'll throw out one number that I think is fascinating. We are often recipients at the board level of the commentary, we like our small school. Well, just think about a small school for a second. So when I graduated from Eisenhower, there were over 600 students, 9 through 12th grade.
Yeah.
And Warren was the big school because it had twice that number, right?
Yeah.
Today,
We have
Warren has a little over 600 students, grade
Yeah.
9 through 12, but we're still talking about Warren. I still hear at the board meetings,
Yeah.
Warren is the big school.
Right. Well, in the confines of the county, sure, that holds true.
Right.
But if you were to go and not even, I'm not even talking like Allegheny County or anything like that, but even just to go over into Erie County and say, would you consider this a big school? And I think you would get a lot of, some people
Raised
probably
eyebrows.
would, yeah, but the majority of them would probably say no. I mean, I don't think,
Right.
We're on par approximately with Corey, and I don't think there's really anybody in Erie County that would consider Corey a big school.
Now, interestingly, Sheffield used to have over 400 students, grades 9 through 12, just as recently as 1980. Today, they're down to 130.
Yeah.
So the definition of what's a small school in Sheffield
Right.
is changed by a factor of 3.
Well, and I look at it, and again, we're talking in 23 years, we're rapidly approaching a point where there are classes of students coming through the district that are going to be approximately the same size as the number of students that I graduated
Right.
just from Warren High.
That's
In
exactly
2000. And, at some point, you have to look at it and say, well, okay, if that's the case across the district, then how do you continue to have this wide distribution and be effective in teaching our children what they need to know?
and being fair to the taxpayer.
Well, yeah, taxpayer, and being fair to the teachers and not overburdening them. And
Which is my question about how small is too small. Yes,
Yeah.
there are plenty of places in the country and in the state where you have very small classes, but you also have in Warren County multiple high schools, and we owe the obligation to the taxpayer because it's a county school district to do the best we can with that.
Right.
So in some ways, Warren County isn't a very good comparison to anybody else because we're the
Yeah.
second largest geographic district in the state, and that with the transportation and so forth makes for some unique problems.
Well, I mean, obviously, you have to take the student forum advice and just bring more students to the county. I thought that was very, very astute observation. But which is, again, all these things go hand in hand, and I hope that people understand that this is not, as a school board and as a school district, it can't be something that you just do on your own. Right? There's got to be help provided if there's going to be more students, or if there's a way to do this from county governments, the local municipalities, people within, even local business owners of, hey, you guys have to take some initiative and try to find ways to bring more people here if we're going to continue to do things as we have done. Otherwise, there has to be changes.
That's why we don't. That's why we recognize the value of a community school, because if you strip schools out of the community, there's obviously less of a desire to move to that community, which is why I'm proud that we have the elementary and middle schools there. I voted to keep the high schools there 14 years ago. We'll see where it goes in this iteration.
In your experience, has having one over the other, having a elementary or middle school or a high school as a community school, if one of them's a feeder for the other, or what have you, is there more value in, say, having an elementary school local to the community, or is there more value in having a high school local to the community? Are they equal?
This is just Arthur's
Right. Yes,
opinion.
yes,
One
absolutely.
of 9 board
Right.
members. I think it's like a triangle, and I think the elementary and the middle school are the base
Yeah.
of the triangle, because parents are so much more involved at those
Right.
grades,
Yeah.
which isn't to say that parents aren't
Right.
involved at the high
Yes.
school level, but quantitatively, PTOs are very active,
Yes.
at those younger ages, and to have that transportation be limited to just going from your house 2 blocks down the road to the elementary school, that's more meaningful than when we can't get people to attend PTO organizations at the high school level.
So almost like the, I guess I would, for reference, people would understand, almost like the McDowell model, where you have the.
Oh, yes, I know.
I think
yeah,
I think it's three elementary, middle schools, and then they feed
Right,
into
feed into
McDowell High School, which again is a bit easier for them because they're not in a 900 square mile radius. But
and that's
Yeah.
true for so many. We visit a lot of districts as school board members just to see what they're offering. And so what you've just described as the McDowell model is pretty routine across the state and the nation.
So you are coming up on the end of your term here on the school board.
I am.
And what made now the time for you to say, okay, it's time to maybe pass the reins up and unless you knew what, kind of sit in this seat and make these decisions?
Oh, thanks for asking. 2 things. I think you get stale on boards, and although I'm a great repository of the history and knowledge, probably people get tired of hearing what I have to say about things. And fresh eyes are good on any board. I serve on a number of boards, and I think some of them are right to have policies that say you only serve a certain number of years. And the second thing is I bought a golf course.
And as I had a professional development where we were talking about writing feature stories, which are more personality pieces. And one of the things the presenter said at that point is, you write your lead, and then when you're getting ready to end the story, you got to roundhouse kick your way back to that lead. And here we are, we go right back to I bought a golf course. So,
Yep.
This has been very illuminating for me. I mean, obviously, for a long time, I've read some of your comments and things of that nature, and being able to sit in meetings, even virtually sometimes over the last 3 years, I think has given me a better understanding of your viewpoints on things. But spending this time together.
Well, congratulations on your daily local. I said
Thank
to
you.
you off the air that I love business success stories, and you have something that's growing at leaps and bounds. I'm happy for you and proud that that's happening in Warren County. Good for you.
Thank you. And hopefully we continue to grow. And, if you're watching this now, be sure to share it with all of your friends and let them know what we're doing. And Arthur, I won't take up too much more of your time. It's a great day to get out on the golf course today. So.
I wished I was going out there to play. I'm going out there to work today.
Yes, retaining wall.
Yeah, retaining wall.
Yes. So if there's anybody out there that has some experience with retaining walls and maybe wants to get head up to cable. But thank you so much for your time.
All right,
we appreciate having you. And
Thanks.
we're looking forward to our Coffee and a Conversation next week. We're going to have a representative from the Warren County Chamber of Business and Industry talk about all the things they have coming up this summer. A lot of good events going on throughout the county, and really looking forward to sitting down with them and seeing what all we have looking forward to this summer in and around the county. So again, for Arthur Stewart, this is Brian Hagler for your Daily Local. Thank you for watching, everyone, and remember, you change one life, you change your world. Cheers.
You know what would make that better? A cup of white cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.